Hi, welcome Gina. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your wisdom with us on what it really takes to make it in business. So I'd love to start and just hear from you. What is your business?
Well, I am a business and certified life coach. So I work with individuals who are either in career transition, sometimes it's small businesses, sometimes it's people going through major life transformation. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. It keeps life interesting.
That's awesome. And how many years have you been in this business?
Informally, probably too many years than I can count. And formally, when I finally decided to bite the bullet, it was 2 years ago.
That's awesome. And so is this your first business that you started on your own, or were you on the entrepreneurial road in the past doing other businesses?
I was very anti-entrepreneurial for many, many years and had a thriving career in corporate America where I ran a sales division in the health insurance industry. And I had a lot of great opportunities, and it was very safe in some aspects. I don't think anything is ever truly secure or safe when it comes to the workplace, but it had the perception of being more secure working for a big company. So the thought of going into the entrepreneurial world was very terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Until I did it.
That's fascinating. So I'd love to hear how your past experience in corporate America, specifically that you were in the sales division, and sales is always important in business. How has that helped you in your business today?
Well, a couple of things. One is when I started out in corporate America, I started in an entry-level position. So I was basically a file clerk. I mean, I just did clerical support. And then I moved into different areas of the company so that I could learn every aspect. Part of it was that I wanted to figure out what I really wanted to do. And then part of it was I thought it's a great opportunity to learn about the company. And then I would have a broad skill set that would allow me to be in various positions. So as I did that, I found a home in marketing, and I really liked marketing until I got introduced to sales. And because sales is a lot of fun. It's very high energy. There's a lot of perks. There's a lot of stress that goes with it, but there are a lot of perks and opportunities. And so what I think the biggest takeaway for me working in the sales industry or sales segment was the value of relationships with clients. And I was never a traditional salesperson in the sense that it was all about the numbers for me. It was always about the relationship. So for me, my sales cycle would tend to go a little bit longer or take a little longer to close a sale, but my retention was higher because I had worked so hard to develop genuine, authentic, and loyal relationships.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I think that's actually a really important golden tip for entrepreneurs to take with them, the value of relationships. And I feel you've shared awesome, but I'd love if you can you expand on that a little bit? How does that play in your business today, the value of relationships?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. One is the relationships that I had when I was in my corporate career, I still have. I've been out of corporate America for about close to 8 years, I think it is. I think I'm coming up on 8 years, 7 or 8 years. And those relationships, those clients, I'm still connected with. We may not talk on a regular basis, but we still stay in touch. And that has also helped me transition into what I'm doing now, because I've had old clients come back to me and ask me if I would be interested in doing some coaching for their organization or individual coaching. So, it works. Also, having a really strong work ethic and coming from a place of integrity makes a big difference, because people refer people that they like and that they have results with and that they trust more so than, someone that they don't. So having that level of integrity, and the key is to really be sincere in all aspects of what you're doing. So even the new relationships that I'm developing or continue to develop are based the same way. So while I may meet new people, I don't go into it with the intent of, oh, here's somebody I can bring in as a client. I want to gauge and see if they're the right person for me to work with, just as much as I want them to make sure that I'm the right person to work with. Because with coaching, You can work with a ton of different people, but here's the thing. If someone's not ready to do the work or make the changes, they won't see results.
Wow.
So you want people who really want to work with you as well.
Yeah, and I think right there is another piece of gold, that when you are in business, you want to make sure that the people that you're working with, that you actually enjoy it. You know, you want your business to be something that you love, and you don't want to end up putting yourself in a situation where you're not happy. You know, you've got to find that right match. I love that you brought that up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really important to be happy in what you do because you're spending so much time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And does that mean that every day is a picnic and it's all rainbows and unicorns? Absolutely not. There are days when I think, oh my God, it's just a hard day because the downside of being solo is that you are every department. I'm used to having a lot of support around me.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I'm the legal department, I'm the secretary or the admin assistant, all aspects of it. So my point is, when you love what you do, it makes it that much easier to stick through those harder times because you're committed and you know that you're going to come out as good or better in the end.
I love that. And you brought up one more super important point that I think startup entrepreneurs and really all entrepreneurs need to really recognize. If you don't have a team, whether you don't want one or you're not at that stage yet, it's super important to recognize that you are one person and yet you have like 5 or more different job descriptions, and to almost like really recognize that, I feel that alone is like super important to recognize.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing that's really, really critical is that even when you're working on your own, like people say, oh, I went into business for myself because I didn't want to work for somebody else. I wanted to work for myself.
Yeah.
But the truth is, anytime you work with any kind of client, whether you're providing a service or a product, you're always working for someone else. You're working for your clients.
Beautiful.
And people often forget that.
Yeah, I love that. That is magic right there. I heard that once before from a business owner, and she was saying, I don't have to report to anyone anymore, but my new boss is my clients.
Absolutely.
That's
well,
so
then you end up
awesome.
with a lot of bosses. Yeah. But I have great bosses, so I feel like I hit the jackpot.
That's awesome. All right. So it sounds to me like you did start local, like your local network from your past employment was actually played quite a role. Is that accurate?
Yeah, fairly accurate.
And then I'd love to know, because you're also online, like you meet with people on Skype or the phone and you work from home. So I'd love to hear about whether that was a transition or how you went from local to global. How did that network grow?
Well, there were a couple of things that happened. One is I was already familiar with doing a little bit of working from home because the job that I had allowed me some flexibility. So I was very fortunate in that sense. So I learned very quickly how to be disciplined because it's easy to get distracted when you're at home.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, I set up an office for myself, and when I'm in here, this is my workspace, but when I'm not working, I don't come in the room.
Nice.
So for me, that works because it keeps it very separate. The other thing is when I was making the transition and trying to put myself out there more, I'm very strategic with the way that I network, simply because I like being around people, but I also really like when I'm home and I have my downtime. Mm-hmm. So networking for me, I did it for many, many years, being in corporate and being in a sales environment. And anyone who's watching this, who's been in the sales environment, knows you have to do a lot of networking. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's a lot of fun, and a lot of times it's like pulling teeth for me, because I am an extrovert in some ways, but I'm still very introverted in many ways. So for me, what I do is I am very selective with what networking events I want to go to, so that I know that the time that I spend out there is going to give me the maximum return on investment. So by doing that and getting in front of people, it allowed me to really look at where I could broaden my market. And then I started working with clients overseas in different countries. And so that was really cool to be able to reach people that weren't in my backyard, to, have an impact on people, who need it wherever they need it.
Yeah, I love that. And now I just want to go to taking some time on networking. So I'd love to hear what type of networking events did you go to? Did you go to those formal ones where people pass out cards, or did you go more to like informal or educational events where that's where you would meet people? What type of events actually worked for you in your business?
I prefer face-to-face, smaller groups, more intimate groups than the ones that have the 200 people and you pass out a bunch of cards.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm more comfortable. It doesn't mean that the other ones are bad. They're just bad for me because it's not enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
And if I'm not enjoying myself, I think that comes across, not just for me, but anyone.
Yeah.
That if you're not comfortable in a situation, guess what? People aren't really going to want to talk to you if you have a look on your face like you're miserable. So for me, I like more intimate settings where I can have one-on-one conversations with as many people in the room as possible, but not just to exchange a business card, but to really get to know them and see what the impact is. Because the great joy of meeting a bunch of different people is that everyone does touch our lives in one way or another. Everyone has an impact, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. We all have an impact on each other. So I look at things like, I've been really fortunate where I have met people in my life who have belonged to networks and have invited me to come and be a part of their network. So I've been really lucky. I don't actively look and see, okay, what networking events are coming up, because they just kind of find me. And I don't mean that in a showy kind of way.
No,
I feel
awesome.
really lucky that way.
Yeah, and I think it all comes back to you and your focus on relationships, and that's actually one of the best tips that like an entrepreneur can go home with, like recognize how valuable they are. And that you don't always need an ulterior motive. Just by being yourself and forming relationships, it's going to open all of these doors. So,
some of my closest friends have come through networking.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'd love to know if you can remember, do you remember like getting that first client? Because everyone needs to get that like first client, and how did that expand? Do you remember that? Or if you can sort of take us through the journey of how you got to one or two to a place where it's like, you know, your business is now stable.
Sure. Yeah. A couple, it's kind of a two-step thing that happened for me. When I started coaching, when I started my certification program, I needed to fulfill a requirement of a specific number of hours. So I had sent out 5 messages to 5 people that I knew saying, you know, I need to get these hours in. Would you be interested in some free coaching? Because I was ready to start with free just because I wanted to see what I needed to do to formalize it. And within, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I heard back from all 5 of them. They all said yes. I thought maybe I'd get one. So that got that part going. As far as getting paid to do coaching, that was a little bit different. I was having a hard time because I wasn't clear on who my customer was and what I really wanted. So I was having a hard time figuring out where to focus my marketing efforts on. And so I really had to get serious and really get clear on, who do I really want to work with? Is it about the money? Is it about the people? Is it about the program? What is it? And then once I was able to get clear, I really didn't have to, I put one email out and I got 5 people the next day. Yeah, five clients within 24 hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I really was fortunate. And I think that is, if people take nothing else away from this interview, I think the most important thing is to really be clear on what you want.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because often when you're starting out, no matter what it is that you're providing, unless it's a product, but I feel it's so true for coaches, there's not always such specificity or such clarity. And many times you'll feel like, oh, I can help all these different people, but it's through the experience that you'll see, who do you actually enjoy to work with and how do you actually like to work. And it's that type of like focus and clarity that helps make you a stronger coach, and it helps to make your business stronger. And is that like, that's what happened for you?
Yes, and I think you raise a really good point, because having that clarity and being very specific on not just who you want to work with, but what your business looks like and what a typical day looks like, and you know what you see for you got to do a lot of forecasting, because your business is constantly fluid and evolving. And What happens is sometimes people get scared or nervous about the money because that's the risk of being an entrepreneur, right? You don't have that steady every 2 week paycheck or twice a month paycheck. So people go into, I've seen this happen with clients and also with colleagues, where people go into a little bit of panic and then they say, okay, well, now I'm gonna do something different to try to bring money in. So what happens is you lose your focus, and it may lead you to an even better focus on what you really want to do if you're not already clear. Or it may take you away from what you really want to do because you're acting out of desperation to bring the money in. And listen, I have no judgment around people wanting to make a good living. I think we're all entitled to make a lot of money if that's what we choose to do. And I understand that we all have bills to pay. But my point is, if you say, I'm a photographer, I'm a coach, I'm a chef, I'm a this, I'm a that, it's really hard to be good at what your real talent is if you're so scattered. My suggestion is to take a look at how you can combine all those strengths to really knock it out of the park and have a really good, solid offering in business.
I love that. That right there, I think people need to rewind and listen again, because so many of us, it's like you might like many different things, but it's like how can you bring it together, and like then you have what they call that really specific niche, or that unique and compelling thing that you have that no one else does. And like right there, that's like the magic. Yeah, I love that. So I'd love to get nitty gritty with you. What are the specific things that you've done? So for example, you'll hear, especially for online businesses, all these things you need to do, like blogging and newsletters, social media, social networking, etc. What specific things do you do and have actually helped you grow your business?
I have a very clear-cut morning of how I do my morning. So I have a very specific routine that includes, I have a daily meditation practice. I've been meditating for years and years. So for me, it's like brushing my teeth. I have to do that before I can jump into my day. If I do my emails and then try to meditate, I'm just so thrown off because my head's already spinning going into all the things I have to do. So I start there, and then when I come into my office, the first thing I do is I make a list of all the things I have to do that day. And, I'll take the list from the day before, the things that aren't finished, transfer them to the present day. And then I go into all of my emails. I do social networking. I will be honest, it's not my favorite thing to do. But it does make a difference. And the way I learned this was I was doing a blog a couple of years ago, and it was a personal blog. It wasn't anything business related. And I thought no one was reading it. And, I post these things, nobody would comment, and it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't, my feelings weren't hurt. I just thought, okay, nobody reads it, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then when I made a decision to end the blog, I posted a final blog post saying why I had decided to stop the blog. Yeah. And all of these people came out of nowhere and said, oh my God, I've been reading your blog all along. I'm so sad that you're taking this down. Yeah. So that's when I learned that just because people don't respond doesn't mean they're not reading it and they're not paying attention. So I do a mostly weekly blog. Occasionally I will skip a week, but I do a mostly weekly blog where I interview people who have really cool jobs and have done really cool things. And the reason I do that is because my coaching is about helping people discover what they really want to do for a living and helping them monetize that and make that into a business. So the point of the blog is to show people that you can do anything and make a career out of it. Whatever you set your heart and mind to, you can make it happen. Yeah. So I do the weekly blog. I do social networking probably consistently at least 2 to 3 days a week. I'm not on for hours at a time. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I think it's necessary. And it has brought traffic to my site. It has helped me build my list. I'm terrible about newsletters. It's something that's on my to-do list that gets crossed off and put on the next day and the next day and the next day. So, but I do think there's an opportunity there. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't do it. I think people should do it. I'm just one of the people who hasn't.
I got a question there. So, because you do put out the blog and you're fairly consistent with that, And then the newsletter, that would be the thing that you would mail out to like a list of people you have, right?
Right.
So I guess my question to you is that newsletter, do you send the blog out to people or?
I don't.
Okay, all right.
That's what I mean. I mean, there's little things, you know, and I'm just being really, because I don't have a perfect business. And I know there are things that I could be doing that I'm not doing. And part of that is prioritizing. Part of that is, you know, being a, you know, one person show.
Yeah.
For me, my clients come first, period.
I love it. So I think what you're raising is so important because so many people will get caught up in the rules of what to do. And I love that you're showing that you can be successful and have your business going well, even if you're not following every single rule. And you almost need to get clear on your priorities and
Right.
you know what they are, and that's what's helped in your success. And I think that's important for people to recognize. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And listen, I mean, there are things, I know there are things that I could do better and differently.
Yeah.
But like I said before, my clients are my priority. And there will be times when I will shift things or I will say no to things because I feel like I'm not spending enough time focusing on what my clients need strategically and proactively.
Amazing.
Because I really believe that that's the foundation for my business.
That's amazing. And I think you brought up something else without using the exact word, but it's like to be fully aligned with like what's most important for you and your actions. And like, would you say that that's almost one of the most important things in the business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a critical piece.
I love that. All right. Now, I don't remember if you know where you were going before I interrupted you there. You were talking about the blog and the newsletter. Otherwise, we can move on, but...
Yeah, and then, you know, and then I have certain days where I see clients, and then I have one day that I don't take clients that day, and I use that as my admin day. So that's when I do all my scheduling for my social media, and I am proactive about, you know, anything that I'm working on that doesn't involve direct client involvement. So if I'm working on a course, or if I'm working on you know, writing the blog, those kinds of things, those I do on my admin day. So I really try to keep those separate because for me, it's also a different mindset.
I love that. So I feel like you do, in a way, have systems in place. Like you've got your week systematized. You've got days for specific things. How important is that in helping the business grow?
For me, it's very important because on those days when I'm seeing clients, it's important for me to be fully engaged. And if I'm focused on the client, but I'm also thinking, oh, as soon as I hang up from this call, I have to do this and this and this, I am easily distracted that way. That's just me. So if I know that for, let's say Tuesday, I have 4 clients that day, I'm fully engaged with those clients. And at the end of our sessions, I usually take notes during the session. At the end of the session, I send up the wrap-up notes to them right away. And then I have a little bit of time to wrap up and then prepare for the next session with the next client. On the days that I'm working on, you know, how I'm going to bring in more business or looking at the social media posts and things like that, the operation side of things, you know, bills and all that other fun stuff that we all have as business owners, then I can focus solely on that and I'm not worried about what my clients' you know, appointments coming up are. So for me, it's helpful for me to compartmentalize it because that's how my brain works. Yeah. And it allows me, like I said, to be fully present with the client on those days when I see them.
That's awesome. And I think that is really good advice for entrepreneurs to take home, to create some system that will work for you, but to recognize that having some system in place is better than waking up every day, oh no, what do I do? Right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And I find that when I am not structured, but this is me, I do well with some structure. I'm not completely, you know, like I have to have some flexibility, but if I have too much flexibility, that's when I find it's very easy, you know, especially when you're on social media, because people will respond on Facebook or they'll tag you in things, and then Twitter, you might get some mentions and things like that. That's when I find I end up spending more time on social media. And I'm not saying that it's bad if you're fully working on it for business, but that's when I get caught up and I realize I've just lost 3 hours playing on Facebook with all my friends.
Yeah.
I don't have that flexibility because I have other things I need to be doing. Sometimes it's fun to be able to take a break and do that. But if I don't have structure, it's really easy for me to lose track of time.
Yeah, and I actually think that that's quite a common thing that does happen is you can get tangled up, especially in social media. I mean, it can have a very powerful effect on your business, but it could also vaporize your energy and your time. And it's so basically to just recognize when is it for business and when are you just getting lost in the void of Facebook.
Right.
Cool. So I feel like you've told us what a typical day is for you and that, different days, different things are allocated, but that you do have the structure and that personal care is a part of it. I'd love for you to tell us just a little bit more how personal care plays a part in your business and growth.
Well, I do a few things because I learned the hard way being in a corporate job for so many years. And, not to place blame on anyone else because I'm solely responsible for it. I threw myself into, it was very easy for me to always be finding something to do related to work. So sometimes if I had a deadline to be met, it wasn't unusual for me to be working until 11:30 at night. Not that I didn't take, little breaks in between, but it wasn't healthy for me. After a while, it was affecting my health. And I was also commuting. I had a 65-mile commute one way that I did a couple days a week. And, and that takes a toll on you after a while. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning is not a fun thing to do.
No way.
So I learned from that. So it's very important to me to have some flexibility and some time, like I was saying earlier, so that I can have that downtime and that quiet time. So typically for me, I try to take a few hours at the end of the week where I'm just not working. I can do something, well, let me take that back. It's not that I'm not working.
Yeah.
I'm not working on things like procedural things or seeing clients. So it would not be uncommon if you showed up at my house on a Friday afternoon and you find me sitting in front of the TV watching TED Talks or something inspiring on the OWN network, because I integrate a lot of those things into the work that I do with clients. Yeah. So for me, it doesn't feel like work, or reading a book that that applies to my business. It doesn't feel like work because I love what I do, but it is work. So for me, it feels more nourishing. And this is a great thing about coaching is when you are coaching other people, it's not necessarily because you've mastered something, because you never fully master anything. Mm-hmm. When you are coaching people, you are having breakthroughs a lot. And any coach who says that they're not, I think it would be hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
But you have your own breakthroughs along the way when you're coaching other people. So just like when I'm watching, these shows or reading these books, I'm having my own personal breakthroughs, which is a great way to connect with self-care.
I love that, and I think it's so true, and I totally agree. And it's like taking care of your own personal development. In a way, it's almost like your responsibility. If your job is like to help and take care of and support others, you also got to make sure that you're being supported and nourished and learning and continuing that development. So, yeah, I love that you shared that.
It is something that I struggle with. I mean, it's very easy for me to get plugged into, I could be doing more. I could be doing more. I think one of my big things is I have, and here I go really vulnerable. Yeah. I have this thing about letting people down. I never want to let anybody down. So sometimes I will say yes when I know I really need to say no. And then what happens is I burn out. So for me, it's a constant struggle, and I have to be constantly aware of it because I slip into that very easily and very quickly. In fact, a very good friend of mine called me out on it just the other day and said that he had noticed that I was slipping into my old ways, and I was like,
yeah,
because I thought no one had noticed.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I love that you've shared that, and I think that that's important because that could so easily happen, especially when you're like a solo entrepreneur, basically doing everything on your own, and it's so easy to fall into that cycle of taking on too much and not taking care of yourself, and to almost like having the awareness and like constantly like even having like meetings with yourself or conversations with yourself and like checking in. How is it going? Have you stretched yourself too far? Do you need to start saying no to things? And I think that that's important in your business, to take time and decide like what's priority. What do you really need to be working on now? Yeah. So before we go, I'd love to hear aside from what you just said, which was awesome, any other final advice or wisdom that you'd love to share?
I think one of the things that I say to, I think that's a great question, by the way. One of the things that I say to clients all the time, and people who I have met who ask me about, going into business for themselves, and I think this is such a key critical piece, is when you are working with people, when you're working with clients, again, whether you're selling a product or a service, no matter what you're putting out to that client, it's always about the client. And sometimes, oftentimes, and it's a real hot button for me because I see it a lot, people forget that it's the client that make or breaks us. And so we make it about ourselves. And once you've gone from the client to making it about yourself, when you make it about yourself, you lose your market, because people are smart and people see that. People see when we come across as transparent. So it's really, really important that if you're going to do something that's related to clients, which we all do in some form or another, your customer has to be your priority.
I love that. That's so important, and I hope people can really hear and integrate that and understand that, because that right there is like so valuable, and it's inspiring just to remember. And it's like that quote you gave. It's like, you've got to make it about the client. Can you share that with us again if you remember?
Sure. Yeah. You have to make it about your client, because as soon as you make it about yourself, you lose your market.
Yeah, that right there, that's gold. Thank you so much, Gina. And tell us, where can we find you? How can we get more of your wisdom?
My website and all my social media is on ginagomez.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom. And I'll talk with you soon.
Thank you, Tova.
Okay, bye.
Bye.